Let me show you two managers handling exactly the same situation. And I want you to notice the difference. Team member comes to their manager and says, I am stuck on this client's problem. I do not know what to do. Manager number one says, okay, here's what you can do. Go talk to the delivery head, get the data from the last quarter, put together a comparison, and send it to the client by Thursday. I will review it before it goes. Problem solved. Quickly, efficiently. The team member walks away with a clear task list. Sounds like good management, right? Now listen to manager number two. Same situation, same team leader, same problem. Manager number two says, before I share my thoughts, what have you tried so far? And if you had to pick up one approach right now, what would that be? The team member pauses, thinks, and then says something the manager did not expect. An approach that is actually better than what the manager would have suggested. Manager number one solved the problem. Manager number two built a problem solver. And that's the difference. That is the difference between managing and leading. Today, I'm going to teach you the art of asking questions as a leader. Not interview questions, not interrogation questions. The kind of questions that make your people think better, own more, and grow faster without you having to carry everything on your shoulders. I'm going to be honest with you. Early in my career, I was a manager number one. Every time someone came to me with a problem, I jumped straight to the answer. I thought that was my job to have solutions, to be the person who fixes things. And for a while, it worked. My team got things done. But here is what I did not see at that time. My team also stopped thinking for themselves. They stopped taking ownership. Every small decision came back to me, and I was exhausted. Not because the work was hard, but because I was doing everyone's thinking for them. It took me years and some very honest feedback from a mentor to understand what I was doing wrong. I was not empowering my team. I was accidentally training them to depend on me. And the tool that changed everything was not a new process or a system. It was learning to ask better questions. After 30 years as a leader and a COO, and now as a coach, I can tell you the single most powerful thing a leader can do in a conversation is asking the right questions at the right time. And nobody, almost nobody, teaches this. Before I give you the framework, let me talk about why most managers, including smart, experienced ones, default to telling instead of asking. There are three reasons, and I want to name them clearly because once you see the pattern, you cannot unsee it. Reason number one, it feels faster. When someone asks you a question and you already know the answer, giving it to them takes 30 seconds. Asking them a question and letting them figure it out takes 5 minutes. And when you have 15 other things to do, 5 minutes feels like a luxury you cannot afford. Reason number two, it feels like a job. In Indian work culture, especially, the manager is expected to have all the answers. If your team member asks you something and you say, what do you think? Many managers worry that it looks like they do not know. So they answer, even when they should not. And reason number three, it feels good. Let me be honest. When someone comes to you with a problem and you give them a smart, clear answer, it feels nice. You feel useful. You feel important. You feel like a leader. But here is the uncomfortable truth. A leader who always has the answers is not building a team. They are building a queue of people waiting for one person's brain. And that queue has a limit. It is called as burnout. The shift is simple but difficult. Instead of being the person with all the answers, become the person with the best questions. That is what the Ask framework, ASK framework, is built for. I call it the Ask method. Simple name because the skill itself is simple. What is hard is remembering to use it when your instinct is screaming, just give the answer. A of Ask stands for align, S stands for surface, K stands for kickstart. Let me walk you through with each one of them. Let's start with A, align. The questions that create the shared understanding. This is where most conversations go wrong, right at the beginning. Someone comes to you with a problem, or you walk into a meeting where a decision needs to be made, and everyone starts talking about solutions immediately. Nobody stops to check, are we even looking at the same problem? Aligned questions slow the conversation down just for a moment and makes sure that everyone is starting from the same place. They sound simple, but they prevent hours of wasted work. Let me give you three examples and notice how plain and simple these are. 1. Before we jump into solutions, can you help me understand what the actual problem is? What is the specific thing that is not working? Well, that question sounds almost too simple, right? But I cannot tell you how many times in my 30 years of work I have sat in a meeting where six people were arguing about solutions and nobody had clearly defined the problem. One question fixes that. Here is another one. Suppose your team member comes to you and says, the client is unhappy. Instead of jumping in with, okay, set up a call, let me talk to them, try this. When you say the client is unhappy, what specifically are they unhappy about? Is it the timeline, the quality, or something else? Now you have turned a vague problem into a specific one. And a specific problem is one you can actually solve. Here is another one. This one is gold in group settings. Just so we are all on the same page, what success looks like here. If this goes well, what exactly have we achieved? When you ask that in a meeting, watch what happens. People pause, they look at each other, and very often you will discover that different people have different ideas of what success means. And that discovery alone saves weeks of confusion later. Aligned questions do not slow things down, they prevent you from going fast in the wrong direction. And that is one of the most valuable things a leader can do. S. Surface. The questions that pull out what people already know. This is the one that will change how you manage your team. I promise you that particular thing. Most of the time, when someone comes to you with a particular problem, they already have an idea of what to do. Maybe it is not fully formed, maybe they are not confident about it, but the thinking is there. It is just sitting below the surface, waiting for someone to pull it out. That someone should be you. And you do it with surface questions. Let me give you the most powerful surface question I know. I use it in every session, and I have taught this to many managers over the years. The question is, if you had to decide right now without asking anyone, what would you do? Read that again. If you had to decide right now without asking anyone, what would you do? This question does something magical. It forces the other person to stop being passive and start thinking like an owner. It says, I trust your brain. I believe you have a perspective. Give it to me. And here is what happens 9 times out of 10. They give you an answer, and that answer is either good enough to go with, or it is close enough that you only need to adjust a small part. Either way, they did the thinking, not you. Here are two more surface level questions that work beautifully. What have you already considered? Walk me with your thinking. And What is stopping you from just going ahead with this? That last one is especially powerful because often the thing stopping them is not a real blocker. It is just the fear of making the wrong call. And when you ask the question loud, they realize that. When you give answers, you create followers. When you ask surface questions, you create thinkers. And thinkers are what every organization is actually desperate for. The K for Kickstart. Questions that create action and ownership. You have aligned on the problem. You have surfaced their thinking. Now comes the third type, the Kickstart questions. These are the questions that turn conversations into action. Here is the difference. Most managers end a conversation by telling someone what to do. Go do X, send me Y by Friday, set up a meeting with Z. That works, but it does not build ownership. The person walks away executing your plan, not their plan. A kickstart question flips that. It makes the other person own the next step because they are the one who has defined it. Here is what it sounds like. Okay, so what is your next step? What are you going to do first and by when? Simple, right? But notice what happened. You did not tell them the next step. You asked them to tell you. And when someone says, I will do X by Friday out loud, they own it in a way they never would if you told them to do. Here is another one. This works well when someone is solving a complex problem. If this does not work the way you expect, what is your plan B? That question does two things. It makes them think one step ahead and it tells them that you are okay with the first approach not working perfectly, which gives them the confidence to try. And one more, and this is my favorite Kickstart question for team meetings. Okay, we have had a good discussion. Now, before we close, who is doing what and what do we need to have ready by next week? When you close a meeting with that question, instead of just giving assignments, the team starts to see themselves as owners, not executors. And over time, that shift changes the entire culture of how your team operates. Kickstart questions do not just end conversations, they start ownership. And ownership is what separates a group of individuals from a real team. Let me put all of these three together so you can hear how it sounds in a real conversation. Your team member walks in and says, the vendor is pushing back on the deadline. I think we are going to miss the delivery date. What should I do? Your instinct is to jump in with a solution, but you use ask. You start with a line. Ask them, help me understand what exactly is the vendor pushing back on. Is it the scope, the timeline, or something on their end that has changed? They explain. Now the problem is clear. You move to surface. Okay, I understand. Now, if that was completely your call, if you did not need to check with anyone, what would you do? They pause, they think, and they say, I would probably break the delivery into two parts. Give the vendor an extra week on the second half, but hold the line on the first. That is a good answer, maybe even better than what you would have suggested. Now you finish with Kickstart. That sounds like a solid approach. So, what is your next step? Who do you need to talk to? And by when will you have all this sorted? They say, I will call the vendor today, send you an updated plan by tomorrow morning, and loop in the project lead by the end of the day. Think about what just happened. You did not give a single instruction. You did not solve the problem for them. You asked three questions. And in 3 minutes, your team member went from what should I do to here is my plan and I will own it. This is the art of asking questions. It is not about stepping back, it's about stepping back just enough so that the other person steps forward. Now, here is the part that goes deeper than any framework. If you are a manager who keeps giving answers instead of asking questions, ask yourself, why? What am I afraid of? For most people, the honest answer is, I am afraid of looking like I do not know. I am afraid that if I ask a question instead of giving an answer, my team will think that I am not smart enough to lead them. That fear is the most expensive belief that you are carrying because it keeps you doing your team's thinking for them. And a leader who does everyone's thinking is not leading. They are just a very tired individual contributor with a manager's title. The truth is, when you ask a question instead of giving an answer, your team does not think that you are weak. They think you trust them. And trust is the most important and powerful thing a leader can give. I learned this late. I do not want you to learn it late. The shift is simple. Stop being the person who knows everything. Start being the person who asks the thing that nobody else thought to ask. So, a quick warning for you. There are three ways to mess up with questions. Let me name them fast, really fast for you. Mistake number one, asking a question when you have already decided. If you have already made up your mind and you ask, what do you think, just to appear collaborative, your team will see through it in seconds. If you have decided, own the decision. Do not pretend to ask. Mistake number two, asking, why did you do that when something goes wrong? That is not a question. That's a judgment wearing a question's clothes. Instead, try, walk me through your thinking on this. I want to understand your approach. Same information, completely different energy. And mistake number three, asking too many questions in a crisis. When the building is on fire, do not coach. Give the instructions. Save the questions for when the fire is out. Good leaders know when to ask and when to tell. I want to leave you with one thought. Tomorrow you will be in a meeting or in a one on one or on a call where someone brings you a problem, and your instinct will be to solve it. Just before you do, try one question, just one, from the ask method. Align, surface, or kickstart. See what happens. The best leaders I worked with in 30 years were not the ones who gave the best answers. They were the ones who asked questions that made everyone around them smarter. That is the kind of leader people want to work for, and that is the kind of leader you can become. Tell me in the comments, what is that one question you find hardest to ask as a leader? Is it the align question, where you slow the room down? The surface question, where you trust someone else's thinking? Or the kickstart question, where you let go of control? I genuinely want to know. I read every single comment. If this gave you a new way to think about leadership conversations, subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share it with someone who is in need. I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.